I've just finished my first week of my graduate certificate in project management, and it was an interesting week. For the first time in my life, I'm actually doing the required readings. In my previous studies, I was a terribly lax student, and so I'm actually feeling like I'm learning a lot. However, um, even though it's the first week, I struggled with one of the early tasks that we were given. So it was a task where we had to work out whether a chosen course of action was the right one. In this case, it was someone who elected to do a project management solution to fix a problem. So to actually spell out the scenario, pretty much there were a company with a pretty small product line has found that they had too much product sales failing due to cut-offs in the delivery process, and this person who was given the task to fix it elected to give the task to two different people, the sales marketing manager and the operations manager, to project manage together with the objective to reduce the sales loss to 5% within 3 years. So that's the objective. And and so I came into that task. So part of the task was to go, give reasons or rationale why it is or why it isn't a good project management solution candidate, pretty much. And I was of the opinion that it was. And I spelled out my rationale based on the readings, because I had been doing them. And I was like, it's this person has brought together a novel group of people. The solutions were potentially going to be revolutionary rather than evolutionary or iterative, which is an operations management thing. And I made a few other arguments for the reasons why I thought it was a good project management. So as part of the, wasn't assessment, part of the task was I had to post it into the group forum. And then after I did that, I clicked the response by the lecturer about the actual task, and the lecturer said, actually, it's more than likely not a project management solution. It is more than likely a operations management solution, and these are the reasons why. And also, he made the point, you should never have two project managers. You should always just have one project manager. I was like, okay, yeah. And so after hearing that, when I went on to the forum, there was one other person who did a brilliantly articulated rationale as to why it wasn't a project management solution, why it was an operations management solution. And I wasn't gutted, but I was just like, man, this is week one. I've dropped the ball here. How did I get this so wrong? And what I realized is while processing that, I was reminded of, I'm not sure if it's a metaphor or whatever, but I remember reading this idea that to a hammer, the world is full of nails. And what I mean by that is for the people who are very specialized in something, they see their specialization in their specialization solution everywhere, and or needs for it everywhere, I should say. And what I realized is that in my sort of arrogance or confidence, I should probably say, in my own abilities, I was like, oh yeah, I'm learning about project management. This is, I'm learning to become a hammer, and this is clearly a nail, which suits this solution. And I realized that is actually it's not a very wise idea. So I'm glad I I shouldn't say I've learned this lesson, but I'm become more aware of this being in play in my life while doing this study. And so, that was probably the most interesting thing that I've sort of come across in this study so far. Obviously, it's just week one. I'm glad that I've come across this, because I know down the track there is actually graded assessment on a similar question. So I'm glad I've kind of wrap my head around this idea. But yeah, and what was interesting is if I was to compare this with some other reading that I've been doing, I've been reading Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, where he talks about companies that have started good, that were just good companies that became great companies, and he broke down the reasons why. But early on in the book, he talked about like one of the things that was immediately apparent in these great companies was that not only did they know what to do, like, and did it, they knew what not to do or what to stop doing, and did that as part of that. So it's sort of, I think it's a little bit relevant for me to realize, hang on, like, if I'm to relate that back to what I've just been talking about in you know, kind of misreading the scenario or misinterpreting the scenario, it's important, I think, for me to come with that mindset throughout the rest of the course, or at least this subject anyway, to know and to always remember that, like, project management is for projects that are definitely different to operations. I'm not even sure if that's a relevant comparison, but I thought it made sense to me, so you're hearing it anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much it. As I said, it's just week one. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot more and make a lot more mistakes and get to reflect with you guys as I'm going along here. But hey, thank you for tuning in if you do. I'll see you next week. Cheers.